Your next speaker will be Professor Ian Yeoman of the European Tourism Futures Institute.
رحبوا معي الآن بالبروفيسور إيان يومان من معهد مستقبل السياحة الأوروبية الذي سيتناول في كلمته موضوع مستقبل السياحة العالمية.
Hello. Hello. Hello, hello. What's hello in Arabic? I can't pronounce that, so I'll just say hello again. I'm Ian Yeoman, and I'd kindly like to thank the Qatar Tourism Authority and Stenton University for this invitation. It's a real honor to be here on this podium today. So I'm going to talk about the future of tourism. I'm not going to tell you what the exact future is. I'm not going to be able to tell you the lottery numbers or who's going to win something. I'm just going to talk about the future in general and what it means for tourism. So let's start. So imagine the world in 2050. Imagine that roadmap going forward. What's going to happen? The good news is Qatar will beat the Netherlands in the semi-final of the 2022 World Cup. So there's a prediction. Okay? You can hold me up to that in 2022 if I'm still around. But the bad news is you will lose to New Zealand, the All Whites, on penalties in the final. So that's... Because did you know New Zealand is the only unbeaten football team in the last World Cup? We drew all 3 of our group matches. Even Spain lost their opening match. So we're the unconquered champions of the world, as they say. In 2026, however, you'll make a great comeback, and you'll beat Germany 9-0 in the final. Well done. And by 2030, Qatar will dominate the world of science and knowledge. You will win all of the Nobel Prizes, from literature, economics, chemistry, physics, everything. And that'll be based on you've discovered the cure for old age. However, in 2035, I know Qatar Airways sponsor Barcelona, but I'm a big Sunderland fan, and we will beat you in the final of the FIFA World Club Cup. Sunderland always dominates the world. And by 2040, Qatar is such a place in the terms of hospitality, everybody wants to come here. The UNWTO will award you the most happy tourist award. It's not about economics anymore, it's about happynomics. So that's going to happen in 2040. And by 2045, Stenton University Qatar will beat Harvard University in the world university rankings. You will be the best university in the world. And by 2050, everything on Star Trek has come true. So what am I trying to say? You may laugh, but the purpose of a future is to create a direction. The purpose of the future is to create something. The world is full of skeptics. People say, you can't do that. It's impossible. But Qatar is going to host the World Cup in 2022. The world says you couldn't do it, but you are going to host it. And you may not win it in 2022. You may have to wait till 2026. But you are taking on the world. You, as a nation, have created a vision. So what I'm trying to say is, the future is all about visioning. What do you want to be, and how do you get there? That's the message I'm trying to get across. So, many of the speakers this morning have talked about some of the drivers for change. So what's pushing world tourism? Fundamentally, if we look to the year 2050, it's about what will be significantly different from today. How will the world change? Because the one thing you've got to remember is tourism is tomorrow's oil. Tourism has been here since the beginning of time. It is here today, and it will always be here in the future. And looking at the drivers of change of world, it's all about where will wealth be, where will resources be, and where will technology be. So, okay. So wealth, that's what I'm going to talk about first of all. It's all about the middle classes of the world, and it's all about aging populations in the terms of demography. They were the significant drivers that will underpin where people go on holiday. So, for example, if we look at changing markets, the world's richest country in the year 2050 will be China, without doubt. And we've already seen that significant change, and it's been demonstrated in various graphs. And it's all about the United States, and it's all about India. Whereas the older countries of the world are having very, very, very slow economic growth on average moving forward. Japan, Germany, and Italy have major aging populations, which will stifle productivity or slow down productivity, and therefore have an impact on outbound travel and what they do. And at the same time, it's also about world population structures. It's all about birth rates, the number of young people. Because tourism and hospitality, fundamentally, from a labor supply perspective, is all about those people under the age of 25. So we can just take a number of countries there and look at how the population structures are changing going forward. India, lots of people having babies. China, because of the one-child policy, significant slowdown. But other countries with major young people problems are Russia, Japan, and Germany. And for New Zealand, it has major significant impacts, because that's where I live in Wellington and New Zealand and commute to Europe at Stenton University. One of our big products is bungee jumping. Anybody done a bungee jump? No? Come to New Zealand, and we guarantee your money back if it doesn't work. Okay? But you don't see many 80 or 19-year-olds bungee jumping. So labour market is going to have a big impact going forward in the future. It's about, as we have ageing populations, how do those industries compete with retail and healthcare for that labour supply? Looking at some economic forecasts going 2050, oh, that's very small, I'd better enlarge it. These are my forecasts, not the UNWTO's. Looking at world forecasts for outbound, for international arrivals, we're going to say by the year 2050, 4 billion people will take an international holiday. 4 billion people will take an international holiday. That's about 50% of the world's population. Remember, in 2050, 25 million people took an international holiday, which is about 1 in 1,000 of the world's population. It's about 1 billion people today taking an international holiday, which is about 1 in 10. But by the year 2050, it's about 4 billion people taking an international holiday, representing about 1 in 2 of the world's population. And it's all about the rise of those middle classes and going forward. I think I've highlighted that. Yeah, I think we'll move on. So significantly, what are the other key drivers of change? Well, aging populations, also an opportunity. We're living longer. It's all about healthy lifestyles. Fundamentally, the world, you retire at 65-ish, and you have then 12 years of good health and 7 years of dodgy health. What we're trying to do is extend those healthy years. We're interested in activities. We're interested in hiking and in tramping. We're interested in health-related activities. So we're trying to alter our life courses. The world is dominated at the moment by those baby boomers in the terms of going forward. But at the same time, we have significant health issues. The World Health Organization is forecasting that 50% of the world's population in a Western world will have diabetes by the time they're 35. In America, by 2020, which is only 6 years away, 50% of that population will have diabetes or pre-diabetes. So basically, the world's getting larger than what we're doing. But science makes significant impacts. We talk about the cure for old age. Well, some people have already done that. If you look at Professor Di Pinio at Harvard Medical School, he's been able to reverse the aging process in mice. telomere structure. It's all about dementia research and dementia drugs. But he's been able to slow down the aging process in mice. So this is the new Botox in the year 2050, you walk-in clinic. So that's some of the ideas around some of the key drivers in the terms of wealth and democracy. But what about the tourist? That's me on holiday in the year 2050. Recognize the T-shirt? It's that tourist, it's new markets going forward. And at the moment, that tourist is in transition in the terms of values. Those tourists from the West want an Eastern lifestyle, and those tourists from the East want a Western lifestyle. And those values, whether it's cultural, identity, they clash, there's conflict. So different tourists want different things. Russian tourists to Dubai, it's all about shopping. Dutch tourists to New Zealand, it's all about the environment and hiking. So different tourists have different values and beliefs, and they're in transition. But fundamentally, what hasn't changed is why we go on holiday. And if you ask people why they go on holiday, it's about two things. The world's two popular holiday, it's all about the beach, and it's all about romance. That's why we go on holiday. They're the two important reasons for holiday choice. Somewhere nice and sunny, with the family, I just want to chill out and relax, and romance in the terms of position, and that won't change. And moving forward, we've got new values coming through, new trends with the tourist. And my colleague John will probably dwell on these and about the future tourist. But it's about things like smart boredom. Smart boredom? Smart boredom's a trend in society. If you're bored, the first thing you do is you get your mobile phone out and check emails or something else. You're never bored. Vertical families, changing values of luxury, different shades of green. There's a whole wealth of different trends going forward. So the world is changing in the terms of values and in the terms of beliefs. Then moving that forward, what about resources? Well, the price of oil also correlates to the price of food. In 2050, there's about, 9 to 10 billion people on the planet. How do we feed them? What about water supply? What about population? Food becomes scarcer, food becomes more expensive. So the debate about oil prices is also a debate about the price of food and where food tourism is all about and the importance of that. So key driver there. Also, other debates are about what's the future of transport and what do we do. We had developments in transport in the 1960s and 70s where it was about subsonic flights. It was all about Concorde. But Concorde didn't work, fundamentally because of political disagreements and also about noise pollution. But what's it going to be like going forward? The debate is constant about Virgin Galactica. Virgin Galactica is a $200,000 US day trip into outer space. 3 hours to get there and 7 to 8 minutes of flotation time. The world's most expensive day trip. But we talk about 2050. What about hypersonic travel? Hypersonic travel. At testing stage now with NASA. This means New Zealand to Qatar within 90 minutes. So New Zealand becomes a weekend destination. It changes what you're all about. What's a weekend destination? And what's a long-haul destination? You've got to remember, going back to Victorian times, going back to the 18th century in New Zealand, the first tourists, it took them 6 months to get there in sailing ship. Then we had the steamships, it took them 3 months. Then with the invention of supersonic travel or the jet aircraft, it took you 24 hours. So what's next? What's next and what's possible? I'm just waiting for Scotty and Star Trek and that beam me up philosophy. Future of transport, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. Who wrote Chitty Chitty Bang Bang? Does anybody know? Who wrote Chitty Chitty Bang Bang? Have you heard of Chitty Chitty Bang Bang? No? Yes? Nobody? You have? Okay. Ian Fleming, the author from the James Bond series. He is the children's writer behind Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, and it's all about flying cars. Well, in the United States, they've licensed their first licensed flying car. This is the only car, the Terrafugal, which is licensed to drive on the road and also to take off. It's about $210,000 to buy. So it reshapes things. Again, it's saying what's possible and what's impossible. What is the future? I'm a bit of a futurist, so we always talk about the Jetsons, so I like flying cars. So we talk about resources and what do we do? It's not about the end of the world and resources. It's all about sustainability and managing and designing hotels for the future based upon best design, based upon principles of sustainability. This is the new Intercontinental Hotel, which opened in Shanghai recently. And it's a marvel in the terms of design, but it's won lots of architectural awards in the terms of sustainability. So we meet that challenge head on. We meet the challenge in terms of the future, in the terms of design. It's not about giving up. It's about futurism. It's about modernism. It's about being contemporary and delivering 5-star service and quality within the arena of sustainability. Because one thing's not going to change. In the future, that the customer's not going to downgrade. They always upgrade. Today's 5-star hotel is only a 3-star hotel in the year 2050. Customer expectations always improve, always go forward. They never go backwards. Service only evolves in a future direction. Technology's changed everything. Once upon a time, we used to read books. Now we have iPads. Once upon a time, everything that you could do, everything that you probably, if you've all got smartphones now, whereas 10 years ago, you probably need another 50 devices to replicate what's on that smartphone. Hands up, let's just to take a quick poll in the audience. Who is wearing a watch? Okay, so about a third of you are wearing a watch. Why don't you wear a watch? You don't wear a watch because it's on your iPhone. Technology's changed, technology's moved on in how we do things. Anybody know who they are? The All Blacks, the fearsome warriors of New Zealand. The fearsome warriors of New Zealand. We are the world champions at rugby. It's just that nobody else plays it. And it's our national sport and our national identity. But it also relates to what is the future experience for that fan. How does augmented reality change the face of what we're doing? Because when we now go to an event, and when we take in that real experience, we also immerse ourselves in that technology. We take photographs of that great try, of that great goal, and then share it with our friends. We're saying to people, I'm here, this is where I am, and this is what I'm all about. It's all about our identity and how we shape it. So everything becomes very virtual. We're telling the world that we're doing that. And it's all changing and going forward and what it's all about in the terms of what is the fan experience, how do we sit down, how do we take in that experience at an event, and what do we do? Because we've seen a number of significant changes in that interpretation. This is the world of augmented reality. This is the world of Google Glasses. We've moved from smartphones where we are today, and going forward, it's all about wearable technologies, more immersion, more information on where we're going and what we're doing. So it's like going into Kyoto or Shanghai or Delhi and a story appearing in front of you, telling you where you are and who you're with and recreating something. And to the extent today, if you can put it on Google Glasses, everything you can put on Google Glasses, you could probably put it on a contact lens. And there's a project out of the University of Washington called Twinkle in Your Eye, and that's what it's trying to replicate. Everything you put on Google Glasses, you can get onto a contact lens. Everything's getting smaller and faster in the terms of that. And it's all about, Terminator, the $6 million man, if you can remember him, or the $6 million woman, in the terms of imposition. And going forward, it's about, do we go to concerts and events to see real people? What is real and what is unreal? So in Japan, we talk about pop stars. We don't talk about pop stars in Japan, about things like Donny Osmond or Madonna. crikey, you can tell my age. You talk about stars like this. Just an example. But I'm not going to say technology is the future. It's a world not of robots or Robocop, etc., etc., etc. It's not about iRobot where they're taking over the world. Tourism is fundamentally about people still. Technology sometimes doesn't work. Tourism is about individuals. Tourism is about humanity. And it's about that relationship between the land, the people, and the culture with that tourists. So real people are the most important thing. That's why you come to a destination. It's to hear stories about what a place is all about. So going forward, markets are in transition, values are changing, tourism is resource-driven, and it's important of how we manage that and how we interpret that. Society is aging, and the concept of an ageless society is here. It's about where wealth will be, it's about transport and connectivity, and tourism is about people and the tourist. It's difficult to predict the future because many futurists have got on stages and said many things, but they've all been absolutely wrong. So everything that I've said today, don't believe me or take with a pinch of salt. They're all just thoughts to help you understand your future and where you want to be. Because it was Thomas Watson in 1946 or 47 said the world will be no bigger than 5 computers. And the world moves on. The amount of knowledge and the speed of your processor in your smartphone today is faster than all of the computers that NASA had to put a man on the moon. Society changes, society moves on. Anyway, if you want to know more, I accept royalty payments, and there's a list of my books, etc., etc. So I don't think I've got anything to say. That's my story about the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Yeoman. Please welcome Professor John App, Associate Dean of Stanford University, Qatar.
رحبوا معي من فضلكم بالبروفيسور جون آب من جامعة ستاندن قطر.
Well, good afternoon, and it's my pleasure to be able to share with you some thoughts about the behaviour of the tourist of the future. And it's pleasing to note that without having spoken to Ian and the UNWTO Secretary General, how our thoughts seem to be coalescing and coming together. Basically, my task this afternoon is to share some thoughts with you about what are the insights on the behaviour of tourists and what should we expect in terms of the behaviour in the future. And I want to also look at it from 2 perspectives. Naturally, that of the tourist, the tourist who is travelling, but also I think it's also important to understand it from the provider's perspective. I'm just going to take you through a little lecture about the psychology of tourism and what it's about. And there are 10 questions that I'd like to share with you to give you the context for what I'm going to share with you in my presentation. Who are the tourists? Why do they travel? What do they prefer? What do they like? What don't they like? And how do they decide where to go? Why do they want to come to Qatar rather than Australia? What image do they have of a destination or attraction? what do they do? What are the activities that they participate in? And how can they be satisfied? And what do they complain about? So when we talk about the psychology of tourism, with these 10 questions, this is what it's about in a nutshell. When we talk about tourism, the typical definition is, well, you've got to travel a particular distance and you've got to stay overnight. Now, that's basic tourism textbook stuff. Another thing when we talk about tourism, we talk about the different sectors. The airlines, the attractions, transportation, the restaurants, etc. But is that what tourism is all about? So the question is asked, what business are we in? Hoteliers will say, well, we're in the hotel business. The airline people will tell you, well, yeah, we're in the transportation business or the airline business. The caterers and the food and beverage people will say, well, we're in the restaurant industry. But is this what tourism is all about? The question is asked then, when you look at tourism in terms of behaviour and social psychology, what is it? And you see in these pictures here, right, on the bottom left-hand side, you've got a lady there enjoying the beauty of the ocean and having a nice, relaxing time. On the other hand, we've got an extreme tourist who's basically about to go down a waterfall. Or do you want to do something that is a little bit more exotic? Going to a place where most people have not travelled to, and particularly for many Westerners, the Middle East is not their number one destination. But one of the nice things about coming to this part of the world, and I've only been here just under 6 months, is that I wanted to look and do something different. I could have gone back to Australia, I could have gone to the US for jobs, but I said, no, that's more of the same. I want to do something different. Life is too short to fritter away doing more of the same. In terms of behaviour, I would suggest to you that tourism is simply about travelling for what? Memorable experiences. For the tourist, it means having fun, relaxing, or getting excitement. If we look at things from the service provider's perspective, it's about staging and delivering memorable experiences. So I would like to suggest to you that we're in the business of staging and delivering memorable travel experiences. And we need to think, well, why do people travel? Again, this is basic textbook stuff. It's unique, it's appealing, it's authentic, it's genuine, one of a kind. More importantly, when we talk about trends, people are looking in terms of the, what's new, what's innovative. And later on, I'm going to be sharing with you a case study from the theme park industry in terms of what they do, in terms of the experiences that they offer to the guests. And more importantly, when we travel and when we experience visiting a theme park, for example, you want it to be memorable. You want it to be different. When we think about who are the tourists, it's anyone who has the time and the money to travel for fun. So we're not talking here about the business travellers. They are a very different and distinct market from your leisure travellers. So when we talk about the future of tourism, I'm talking about the group of people who are going for fun and relaxation. The question is asked, do we really know and understand them? Most probably what? Correct. Most probably no. The reason for this is that, right, we need to find out and understand, well, what do they prefer? Right? I've suggested to you memorable experiences. Secondly, decent quality service. And the question is asked, do they get it? What has been your experience? I went out with some colleagues and some former friends from Hong Kong Polytechnic last night over at Qatar. Recommended to go to Mamig restaurant. Very nice food. But the service at times was lacking. Did we get quality service? To some degree. Could it be better? Certainly. Let's look at tourists of the future. And I'd just like to share with you 3 things that are going to be shaping what's going to be happening and how it's going to influence tourists. One, obviously, is the economy. Secondly, we're talking about demographics. And as mentioned by my colleague, Professor Yeomans, technology. I think tourists of the future are likely to shift more to niche tourism. For example, medical tourism, spa tourism, Antarctic and Arctic tourism, gay tourism, space tourism. The reason why I'm emphasising this is we've got to go beyond thinking that the bigger the better, or the more is better. I think if we're going to talk about the sustainability of tourism, we need to think in terms of high yield with low volume. Right? There's basically faulty thinking. The popular maxim, as I've just mentioned to you, is that the more, the better. But this often leads to what? Lack of sustainability. But as I quite often share with my students, small is beautiful. Where are the growth markets? I don't need to say too much. It's been mentioned by most previous speakers, but certainly the BRIC countries. We look in terms of global economic power, in terms of what happened in 1870 through to 73 to 2010, up to 2030. And what you will note, 2 of the top 3 countries are from the BRIC countries, that is China and India. I've also mentioned the Middle East, and some of you may be surprised. Why would I include the Middle East? Certainly it's a small market. It doesn't have the numbers that we will find in China and also in India. But it is very wealthy, and certainly as many of you may know, the state of Qatar has the highest GDP, and many of the other Gulf countries also share this same particular economic attribute. So if you're a service provider, why do you have to appeal to the masses? Why do you think bigger is better, right? Does it mean that the better attendance that you have, the higher the tourist arrivals that you have, is indeed better? Think about it. One of the problems that have been experienced in China with so many people travelling, one of the big problems that they're facing in the industry there is its high volume but low yield. Why should we tolerate this? Therefore, small is beautiful. So, with the Middle East, people in particular, they've got the means, they've got the money, they've got the time to travel. So it's a very important market. So who are the future travellers? The Chinese and the Indians. They represent 37% of the world's population. If we start looking in terms of the demographics, there are the baby boomers, the Gen X, the Gen Ys. If we talk about the Chinese tourists, who are they? Certainly, they are a fast-growing middle class, and as Professor Kulin presented, in his graph, it is growing exponentially. They are group-oriented. This is something that many Western service providers need to change their thinking and their mindset. When you're dealing with collectivist societies, they think very differently. to those of the West. India also, as a society, is collectivist in the way in which they think and the values that they subscribe to. With collectivist societies, and I've noticed this in the Arab world as well as amongst Asians, the motivation of self-esteem and status seeking is very important. If you take a course in Management 101, right, we will always come across Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? And for those of you and the students in the audience, if I ask you, what is the top need, you're going to say self-actualization, right? Whoopee, right? But what does self-actualization mean, right? It's something that is a very Western and individualistic concept. But you mention that to an Asian student, to an Arabic student, it's going to be meaningless. The student is not going to rush home to say, look, startling revelation today. And the revelation is that our highest need is self-actualization. That is completely meaningless to those from a collectivist society because it's very individualistic. It's talking about something that is abstract. For the Asian, indeed, it is status. And that's what drives a lot of their behavior. Right? The Chinese are also big spenders. When they spend, they're not only spending for themselves, in terms of gift giving and in terms of reciprocity and respect because of Confucian values. Gift giving is very important. I was always astounded, when I used to take my students on study tours, that my colleagues and the students will, when they go souvenir shopping or you go to a snack shop to buy certain products and that, they're not only buying for themselves or their immediate family members and friends, they're buying for their work colleagues, their teachers, believe it or not. And if you look in my kitchen cupboard at home, I've got a full cupboard full of Chinese tea because when the students used to go back home to China, when I was working in Hong Kong, they'd bring back, a beautiful container of tea. But I would never refuse it. To refuse that will be an insult to them. And I think also with the Arabic people, there's similar thinking. But you need to understand this. This is how they think. These are the values that they have, and it's important to understand that if you're going to be able to stage and deliver memorable experiences. In terms of demographics, the baby boomers, right? I'm a baby boomer, right? And they represent nearly 1/3 of the world's population. Many are now retiring and well established and big spenders. We look at Gen Y, Gen X. They think very differently. So much so that the Fortune 500 companies have had to employ psychologists and sociologists to explain who are Gen Y? Why do they think the way that they think? How do we enable them to become productive in the workplace? It certainly is a challenge. So, who are the future travellers? And the question, more importantly, is for you to know their characteristics, how they think, and what they like. And if you do not understand that, you're going to be in trouble. You're going to miss the mark. It was Walt Disney who said, "You don't build it for yourself. You know what people want and build it for them. Not for you, for them." So it's important for service providers to put themselves in the shoes of the guests that will be coming. And in this regard, when we look at the Chinese market? What are we doing here in the Middle East? What are we doing in Europe, in the United States, to accommodate this fast-growing market? Presently, for example, our students are taking a foreign language in Spanish. Maybe we need to suggest that Mandarin, the official Chinese language, needs to be considered as something that we need to teach. Certainly in Australia, back in the 1980s, when Australia was the number one destination for the Japanese. There are many Australians, particularly in the state of Queensland, where we've got the Great Barrier Reef and the beautiful weather there, who are Japanese speaking. In recognising this, what the State Education Department did, offered Japanese to secondary school students. So we need to think differently about what's happening and where the changes are occurring. Remember Dick Tracy? Anyone remember? Right? In the 1960s, they had a cartoon strip, okay? And you see Dick talking to his radio watch. Guess what? 72 years later, Samsung produced the first smartwatch. Undoubtedly, technology is a game changer. We have OTAs, the online travel agencies, social media, and apps, right? And basically, for OTAs, what are the implications of that? Ready access to information and online reservations and communications. We look at social media. What does this mean? It has word of mouth, or these days, text-to-text implications, all right? And this type of word of mouth, guess what? Influences public and consumers' image of a destination, of your attraction, of your hotel, of your restaurant. If we look at apps, right? When we think of ready access to information, these days, do you really need your Lonely Planet book or your Fedors? You can get it all on a PDA smartphone. I think we need to think in future about virtual tour guides. Will there need to be tour guides to be there? At the moment, right, we're reading things from the apps. Eventually, we may say, well, when you go to a particular destination, a hologram will appear. And there'll be a tour guide there to explain to you about the attraction, etc., that you'll be visiting. Certainly, there's going to be greater use and reliance on it. The million-dollar question is, can it deliver memorable experiences? I think you need to understand, yes, technology is very useful, but it has its limitations. It lacks the personal touch. It lacks customization. There are privacy and security concerns. There is over-reliance. And unfortunately, particularly for a lot of Gen Y and others, there's an addiction. And the question is asked, can you function without the technology? Can you go without going onto the internet for a week? I've done it when I'm on vacation, and I'm happy to do that. Right? What happens? If the computer system or the Wi-Fi network shuts down, right? Can you continue with your work? Do you know how to function? These are things that you've got to consider. Delivering memorable experiences. What is it about? Is it about mainly just giving good service and achieving guest and tourist satisfaction? This is what I think many service providers strive to obtain. But is that enough? Or is it about obtaining loyalty, repeat patronage, positive word of mouth? Or is it really about branding, which is the ultimate goal? So that whenever you think about staying in a particular hotel, there's no need to think about it. You know it's going to be this particular brand, this particular hotel. Or if we talk about theme parks, right? Memorable experiences. What does the tourist seek? They want smooth and seamless travel. They want to receive mindful, not mindless service. And mindful service is about staging and delivering memorable experiences. Mindless service is when you get the fake smile when you enter the restaurant or enter a retail store. Mindless service is having to ask the waiter when we're sharing a meal, please bring a serving spoon. This is what we had to do. We had to ask it 3 or 4 times as the dishes came last night. Okay? People in the future want to seek consistent quality service. Having your expectations exceeded is also what the tourists are seeking. They want to be surprised. They want to say, wow, I never expected this. I'm coming back. But all it takes is one unpleasant or negative experience to spoil the whole experience for you. The lost luggage, the dishonest shopkeeper, the dishonest taxi driver, the rude tour guide. Let's talk about the spa industry as an example before I talk about the tourism and about the theme park industry. Why has it become so successful? It's about pampering. It's individualized. You are paying for the treatment yourself. It's a stress reliever. I deserve it. I deserve to be pampered. But guess what? It's a high-yield product. And for many hotels and the upmarket spa resorts and chains, it's a big money spinner. Look at the theme park industry. When we talk about the market leader, all I have to do is show this and you know who I'm talking about. Right? What's their formula to success? Disney has what we call Disney speak, and they talk about magical experiences. Right? If you ever receive an email or a letter from a Disney person, at the end of the salutation, when their salutation is basically, have a what? Magical day. And they're talking here about memorable experiences. This is something that Walt Disney thought about in 1955. Right? 1955. 60 plus years ago. All right? Part of their reason for success is what? Having clear and easy follow set of rules and core values and giving attention to detail. It's the market leader. It has 11 parks, 126 million visitors in 2012. Hong Kong, Disneyland is the lowest priced one. It's the newest one. It doesn't have as many attractions, but you're paying $58 US. If you go to Orlando, $95 US including tax. Big dollars. And you've got 126 million paying this type of money. Where is the action? Of the top 15 parks, it's equally divided between USA and Asia. And the action in Asia is in Tokyo Disneyland, certainly Japan, Hong Kong, Korea. Disney core values are fairly simple, and there are only 4 of them. This is what underpins everything that they do. It's safety, show, courtesy, efficiency. Related to these core values are the service behaviours that Disney expects. Disney style service, and you see the acronym SMILE. Service, right? The first one is smile, eye contact, respect the guest, value the magic, initiate, be proactive, don't just stand there and wait, courtesy, end with a thank you. So this is the title of a book, Why Do We Love Disney? Right? They create Disney magic. They always focus on quality. They do not spare the expense. They continually innovate. They focus on family values. They treat customers as guests. They seek to exceed guest expectations. It gives attention to detail and seeks to stage magical experiences. Tips for service providers, and this basically serves as a summary of what I shared with you. Do you know your guest and how they think? Think from the guest's viewpoint. Wear their shoes. Develop cultural sensitivity. So you've got to start thinking multicultural rather than monocultural. I had a former student from Macau. She was a doctoral student, and she worked as a management trainee, with the Venetian, the Sands Group. And she got frustrated with the boss who came from the United States. And as you may be aware, they have the Venetian in Las Vegas. And the boss told her, well, in the United States, in Las Vegas, this is what we did. If it works in Las Vegas, it must work in Macau. That was enough to drive her away, and then she became a teacher, right? Keep it simple. Get back to basics. I think with all the technology and things like that, I'm suggesting to you, let's get back to the ABCs of what appeals to people, what motivates their behavior, all right? Give attention to detail, focus on consistency. Provide mindful, not mindless service. And Professor Coolan has been talking around town about Qatar Plus, where Qatar Plus is talking about how do we generate mindful service. And of course, we want to stage memorable experiences. We don't just want to simply give guest service and get customers' satisfaction. That's only the first step. So in conclusion, the behaviour of the tourists of the future will depend very much upon who they are, namely those from the BRIC countries, plus the Middle East. We need to understand the generational demographics. What do they think? What's important to them? We need to understand their cultural as well as their generational values. Technology certainly will influence future behaviour, but it has its limitations, and future tourists will be seeking memorable experiences, so please surprise and wow them. So we need to adopt the soft and personal touch, be mindful, provide the unexpected, and surprise them. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Mr. John. We will now open the floor to discussion and question and answers before breaking for lunch.
نفتح الآن المجال لإجراء جلسة حوار قبل استراحة الغداء.
I know this always needs a little bit of encouragement, so I'm not sure, have we got a roving microphone? We do? Good. Just hold up your hand if you want to ask a question. Our speakers have stunned the audience into silence. There's a question.
Professor John App, how do we stage experiences? What skills do we need to stage experience?
Right. There are a number of things that we need to consider. It's not just only about just having your staff perform certain behaviours. It goes back to your setting and your design. All right. Professionally, I'm a town planner, and in some of the presentations that I give, particularly about the tourism industry, I always share in my executive development workshops that the key to good management begins with good planning and design. And certainly when you, for example, you go to a Disney park, one of the things that they do, when you go into a themed area, it's about telling a story. Hence, many of their attractions are based upon a movie, upon a fairy tale. So you provide that type of particular setting. But I think also it's important about that personal touch. I think, with the rush towards technology, yes, it's nice to have, but we need to think on the human side. And I think Professor Yeomans made reference to that as well. One of the reasons why we want to travel, we want to see and experience other cultures. That's one of the reasons why I came here to the Middle East. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is someone else who would like to ask a question? Well, then I'll have a go. Qatar is focusing on cultural tourism and sports events. How do you think that fits into the tourist of the future, Professor Yeoman?
Culture and sports.
It's on.
How does that fit into the future? Well, I think there are several things there. I think any destination can't be everything to every tourist. So with limited capacity and different values and different behaviours, the destination has to provide a range of products and experiences which suits them for certain markets. Because you've got to remember, 99.9% of the world has not been on holiday in Qatar. Qatar's share of world tourism is tiny. And you've got to ask yourself, how do you attract those tourists? So you attract tourists where you can emphasize quality and you can emphasize distinction in the terms of experience. And the products you're chasing are culture and events. So you do those two products very well for a very niche market.
Okay, if there are no further questions, then what I would like to do... Yes, there is. Good. Please.
Thank you. My name is Abdurrahman Al-Sheikh from Saudi Commission for Tourism. My question about the new tomorrow tourism. There is new apps in Google, like Google Maps or Google Street View or Virtual Tour. So you can visit anywhere from your home. You think this is a new kind of tourism? I visit everything from my home rather than take a ticket, visit a city.
Sorry, are you asking how important Google Maps are?
Yeah.
Is that the question? Sorry.
No, my question now, any museum, there is a virtual tour.
Yeah.
You can visit from your desktop. So you think this new kind of tourism?
No, it isn't. Technology is a substitute and technology is a support for tourism, but it doesn't take away from the real experience of what it's all about. Something's changed in the last 3 years because of the global financial crisis. We have a trend called what we call end of adventure. And basically, before the tourist comes to your place, your museum or your restaurant, they want to know everything about it. They want to immerse themselves in it. They want, because particularly in Western markets, behaviors change in the terms of consumption. It's more thrifty, it's mercurial consumption, and they want to see what it's all about. And they want to test it out before they actually get there. So having that virtual reality is extremely important. It's not the end of tourism, because you've got to remember, people said the same thing when we invented the radio, and when we invented the movie theaters, and when we invented the television. It wasn't, because they became experiences, but we still want to travel, we still want to do things. 1950, 25 million people on holiday, today 1 billion. and it's going to continue to grow. So technology and virtuality supports and enhances the experience. But it's extremely important, extremely important.
If I can just add to that, this underlines the importance of these virtual experiences in the way of destination branding. And how many of you have not watched a movie, seen a scene of a part of the world where you've been there and you've had this "I've been there" reaction? So the memorable experience concept, as explained by Professor App, is very much, I think, part of tourism.
I'll just add on to that. Last year, the big movie was The Hobbit. Who's seen The Hobbit? Hands up. Well, it was the 8th reason why visitors came to New Zealand last year, The Hobbit. We're this little country at the bottom of the world. Why would you like to travel to the bottom of the world? And it was the 8th reason why people came. So it has a big impact, and it's very important.
Right up the back there. We'll make that the last question.
Good afternoon. This is Muhammad Ibrahim from Qatar Ways. My question is, what are the new tourism trends in the future in 2030, and how we could attract the potential customers to Qatar to increase its tourism market segment and be a leader in these new trends? So we know it's the traditional ones like historical, beach, recreation, adventure, and extreme trend. What are the new trends in tourism?
What are the new trends
In tourism.
by 2030?
2030, 2040.
Okay. Well, there's a couple of things. Some things will change and some things won't change. One of the things that's very important is the things that won't change. It's still about hospitality, it's still about service, and it's still about culture. But the big thing that's changing is the number of people that are going to take holidays. Today, it's about 1 in 10 of the world's population taking holiday. That grows to 1 in 7, to 1 in 6. So there's just more middle classes having access to wealth and having access to resources that will come and do things. So for any destination, it's about positioning themselves. What are the niche markets I want to be in, and how do I present that? And we've seen some of that changes happening now in the terms of how we present it in the terms of technology, and how we present it in the terms of participation and service. Quality increases, and just some of the markets change. What's going to be stronger in the future? The importance of the environment, sustainability, and how we manage resources are going to be more important. Technology, Google Glasses, twinkle in your eye, more important in the future. Aeroplanes, new designs, and new ones. I look forward to Qatar being a weekend break for New Zealanders in the year 2030, and I look forward to a Qatar football team winning the World Cup in 2026. Thank you.
I'd just like to add one comment. If you look at things from a service provider's perspective, it's important that there is commitment from the leadership and the management of government or any organisation. Without that, you can't really move forward. And if they embrace these trends and follow what's happening, that's going to be part of the ingredient to your success.
Sorry, can I add one more thing to that? One more thing we probably haven't mentioned today. I think I want to talk about, we've talked a lot about the leisure tourist. One area that's very important is the business traveller and the MICE market. And a lot of, the more Qatar invests in a university system and creates a knowledge culture, it drives research in science and technology. It also creates conventions and why businesses come here. So business tourism is also extremely important, not just looking at the leisure traveller.
Thank you. We will now have a lunch break of 1 hour with buffet next door. And please be reminded to complete the evaluation form included in your conference pack and submit it at the registration desk. Thank you.
ندعو السادة المشاركين بتقييم المؤتمر، وذلك بواسطة بطاقة التقييم الموجودة في حقيبة الهدايا وتسليمها لمكتب التسجيل. سيداتي سادتي، تفضلوا الآن لأخذ استراحة غداء مدتها ساعة واحدة في البوفيه، وشكراً.